family, and we're going to tell you about our rocket mass heater.
Here it is, folks, the much requested, long-awaited rocket mass heater video. We're putting everything in here with a demonstration and answers to your questions. It's so extensive that we put a table of contents in the description so you can find your way around. Our rocket mass heater demonstration and family review. Please enjoy. We'll explain what the rocket mass heater is and how it works and how we made it all in just a moment, but I'm going to start with the two most frequently asked questions for those of you who want to get right to it. One, how much wood do we use? Is this efficient heating system really reducing the amount of wood that we use? We decided to just show you how much we use on a typical day.
Just where it was needed, gleamed in black as night, cloistered in injustice, dead in the eye.
That volume of wood is 2 2/3 cubic feet. So if we were to burn at that rate, we would go through 2 cords of wood in 96 days. That pretty much represents our entire burn season. That's over 3 months of burning what is essentially the hottest fire that we normally do. Some days we'll burn a little longer just to get us through some really cold nights, but a lot of days we burn less than that. So on average, that's a pretty good representation of what we go through. So not really having a comparison in this house, our other experience burning firewood was in a little steel box stove in the yurt. So smaller space, but much less insulation and much less efficient heating. So much of our heat would go right out the chimney. We went through at least 5 cords each year, each season, for the 3 years that we were in there. So that's a lot of firewood to collect and split and keep dry and carry in and set on fire. So I'm really happy with the savings here. And like I said about efficiency in general, I'm not one to sort of push the boundaries of trying to be the most efficient and being really militant about it. I just want it to be something that I'm comfortable with the energy input and I'm comfortable with the result, not compared to sort of the world at large, but just within my own experience, I think this is a pretty good deal.
The other most frequently asked question is, how well does the mass really retain heat? The cool thing about a rocket mass heater is that it stays warm long after the fire is out, but how well does that work really? I've got this nifty little temperature thermometer gun in my hand, and this rocket mass heater has not been fired up for 24 hours. Let's check the temperatures. First, on the barrel, we've got 88 degrees. On the mass, this is where the hot air is going first. Let's go under the blankets. We've got 108 degrees. And on the other side, we've got 111 degrees. It's not super cold right now. On a colder night, we might have lost more heat, but that is typical. That is an example of how it's working for us. When we get up in the morning, the rocket mass heater is still warm.
It's a big hunk of mud that stays warm all day.
I like to lie down on it.
What makes the rocket mass heater so efficient and effective at heating our home is a combination between how the fire works and then how we store the heat. So the rocket part of it refers to a rocket stove, which is a J-tube fire shape. The air sucks from the short side of the J up the tall part of the J, and it creates a really hard draw, or a lot of oxygen moving fast. So it actually makes kind of an upside down fire. You're putting the sticks in the short part of the J, and then the air is being pulled up into the barrel, which is the tall part of the J, and that makes the fire burn super hot. That's the rocket part of our rocket mass heater. The mass part is basically a pile of mud. Milo will tell you. It's a pile of mud and clay. It's called cob. We mixed clay and sand and a little bit of straw to make a big mass. We have hot air passing from the rocket part of the stove, which is burning super hot. That hot air is moving through tubes and then goes out our chimney. By the time it gets out the top of our chimney, it is no longer burning super hot.
The whole thing is powered by a rocket stove, which is a J-shaped burn chamber. Fuel goes in the short side of the J, the fire burns sideways in the bottom of it, and then the draw is created by a tall vertical chimney. All right, so that's the basic shape of a rocket stove, and why it burns so hot is that proportion of feed tube, burn tunnel, heat riser, or chimney. That chimney is contained entirely within the barrel. So it's not just a big empty barrel. There's a chimney inside of it that comes to within a couple inches of the top of the barrel. All of that is built out of fire brick because that fire gets to well over 1,000 degrees. And so at that temperature, being built out of kind of anything else would not be a good idea because it will degrade, it'll break down. Fire brick is really one of the best materials for handling those temperatures. So that's the engine of the thing. The gases then come out of that chimney, go all around the inside of the barrel. A lot of the heat is given off into the room, right off of the barrel. That's your radiant heat source for the room. So that gives you that instant pleasure of sitting next to a fire, much like a wood stove radiates, and that's the only way that it heats. The barrel acts as that radiant heat source. The gases then go through a hole in the barrel down below and through a series of tubes that are encased in cob. And cob is just earth. It's a heavy material. That's the mass in rocket mass heater. The gases are able to shed the heat into the cob, and the cob stores it as acting as a thermal battery. So by the time the gases make its serpentine way through this bench and up and out of our chimney, those chimney temperatures are only about 150 degrees. So you know that from a fire that's well over 1,000 degrees to its exit at 150, it has shed a lot of heat into this mass and into your room. So more of your heat stays inside instead of heating all of the great outdoors.
So let me go over a typical day for our rocket mass heater. We have a 2-hour period on a typical day, a typical winter day, let's be clear. If we're getting below 0 temperatures, any kind of freezing temperatures, we're gonna run the rocket mass heater for about 2 hours. And during that time, someone is on the job. Someone is operating the rocket mass heater. It isn't full time. You can definitely walk around and do other things. And you're also, in our case, double checking that there aren't any objects too close to the barrel or happy children bouncing too close to the barrel. And that's something that requires operation and attention. Of course, if you have a typical wood stove, that also is something that you need to protect little hands from touching or they will get burned. I started the fire this morning at 7 a.m. It's actually very easy to start, and we've found that we get less ash if we use as little paper as possible. So a little bit of kindling and as little paper as possible to get it started. And then we do one load of very dry 1x2. This was a waste product from a mill. It's very dry and catches very easily. And one feed tube full of that very dry 1x2 gets our rocket stove rocking within 10 minutes. Here are temperatures 10 minutes in on the barrel and on the mass on either side. By a half an hour in, we're starting to add our wood from our wood box. So this can be a number of different things. It can be offcuts from the mill, it can be limb wood, it can be things we've picked up off the ground. We start to fill in this wood after that first load of dry 1x2. This wood also should be dry as possible, but it can be a little bit larger. At this point, we've got the barrel, it's completely rocking, that's over 700 degrees, and the mass on either side of the barrel is just starting to heat up. At 8:30, we are done putting in wood. Now we're going to start to cover up the feed tube. We don't want the mass to get access to cold air from outside. That will exactly reverse what we're trying to do. So we're going to close up this feed tube as soon as the fire is out so that there isn't cold air flowing through our mass and cooling it down again. At 9 o'clock, we're completely done. Here's Nick closing up the feed tube, and here are our temperatures on the mass on either side. This is as hot as we're getting it most days.
So one thing that people are sometimes intimidated by with this big serpentine network of tubes going through it is how do you clean it out? And isn't that a pain? It's recommended in the book that you do it annually. So you just have to open it up and vacuum out all of the tubes once a year. We did that this year and found quite a bit of ash had settled around the base of the heat riser, and a bit of ash throughout the network of tubes. I guess for my just based on my experience, I might do this once during the burn season, just so that it doesn't get to be quite so much. But as far as my experience goes, I think if I just did it one other time during the year, I'd be pretty happy with it. One concern that folks have with these systems is chimney fires, which is a real concern in a lot of wood burning scenarios. One thing that protects you from chimney fires in this setup is the thermal battery and that cool exhaust that you're getting in the chimney. We have never seen a chimney temperature over 200 degrees. So that is not hot enough to create a chimney fire. There's not creosote in the tubes. There's not enough fuel and not enough temperature to create a chimney fire situation.
One more thing. If you want to have a lot of moisture, then you might want to put a pan on top of the barrel. Well, how this barrel works is put a pan on top there, pour water in it, and we get moisture.
So it isn't so dry?
No. Sorry, now I am king again.
You can run it off of not only very little wood, but also what other wood stove operators would term as garbage. So it can really almost entirely run off of waste. That's one thing that I really like about it. I also like that we don't have to stay up at night or feed a fire at night, it really is a fairly consistent temperature spectrum throughout the day. It does get really, really warm right when we're burning it. We live in a pretty small space. We have an open plan, so the heat coming off of the barrel really does heat up the entire space quite a lot. And if it's very cold outside and we want to burn a longer fire so that the heat in the mass carries us through the very cold nights, then we're usually overheating ourselves just a little bit while it's going. That's not a bad trade-off, though, for not having to worry about a fire overnight.
What I love about the rocket mass heater is that it is a warm place to be. And I spend a lot of time here. I spend a lot of time right here with my books or with my computer or with a kid with me. And it gives me so much comfort and satisfaction. It just feels like an antidote to everything that's hard about living off-grid in the winter. The disadvantage to that is that it makes me lazy. We've actually made a rule that I can't do my video editing sitting on the rocket mass heater because I get so sleepy. I have a brother who specializes in Russian literature, and of course there's technology in Russia and Eastern Europe. The masonry heaters, generations and generations long tradition of masonry heaters, which are similar to this in terms of holding heat in a stone battery. And when my brother came to visit me, he said, "Oh yes, in all the great Russian literature, there's always a younger son who spends all day lying around on the stove and is the lazy character." I thought, that is real. Is there anything you don't like about it?
Well,
No.
first of all, it's dirty. It's big. It's a big hunk of mud.
That's
like
why
I
we
just
put
said.
blankets over it.
And also, it is, well, hot.
Ouch! Ouchie!
And it's big.
And if you sit on it for a long time, you get really hot. It's ouchie!
Sadie.
One thing to think about if you're considering a rocket mass heater for yourself, and especially if you have a family, is that the rocket mass heater has different states of being over the course of the day. When we're running it, the barrel is extremely hot. After we've run it, the barrel is kind of hot. And then during that nighttime that we're not running it at all, the barrel's only slightly warm. This matters if you have children, if you have small children, they need to be able to understand those differences, otherwise they will get burned. We're fine with the age that our kids are now. They all get it and they know to stop and check to see if the barrel's hot before they put an object on it or lean their bodies up against it. But if you did have a toddler or very small child, you'd have to have full-time supervision or some kind of barrier to protect that child from getting burned on the very hot barrel. Of course, that's also true of a wood stove and the radiant heat coming off of a more typical wood stove.
I guess a rocket mass heater is like any appliance, any tool. It's only as good as the operator is. So you can run it really poorly, you can make mistakes, or you can stay on top of it and have a real smooth process. So it's entirely up to you.
Thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumb in the middle?
I'm gonna give this a great big thumbs up and then another one about like that.
So would you give the rocket mass heater thumbs up, thumbs down, or in the middle?
Diagonal.
Diagonal?
Thumbs up because we made it ourselves. Takes less wood. Some sort of diagonal because it gets really hot. It's dirty. It's big. Like we could be using that space for bookshelves.
Stella, would you give the rocket mass heater thumbs up, thumbs down, or in the middle? How about you, Sadie?
I like it because it's a warm place to cuddle. I'm gonna cuddle with my bed.
I'm actually going to give the rocket mass heater a thumb in the middle right now because it's ugly and I do care about appearances. but it's going to very quickly turn into a full thumbs up because I simply adore how this thing functions. It's one of my favorite things in the world, and I have absolute faith in the master builder here in the little house that he's going to make it beautiful.
She's invited River.
Yeah, it's only her class.
You may notice that our rocket mass heater is covered in blankets, and you can still see the unfinished cob, even some insulation sticking out. Last year, we really just got this to an operational point, and then winter was on top of us, and we did not put the finishing layers on it. That was a decision in the moment to just focus on functionality, but I'm really happy that we did that, because we have now learned some things about how we use it, how it fits in the house, and has really informed what we're going to do to finish it out. So this part of the bench is a major hangout for many people. It does get a little close to the barrel, but we're going to finish it out where these pillows are with a little bit of a seat back so that you have a more comfortable place to be. A little bit of separation from the barrel. Also building up a little bit of mass around, not actually touching the barrel, but close to it, like we will in that seat back. We'll glean some heat, some of that radiant heat from the barrel, and even store more of the heat that we're putting through this. We're also building up that back part a little bit. That has become an awesome glove drying, boot drying place. It's fairly close to the barrel, but not dangerously close for a lot of those materials. And so that's become a really great place to dry things out. So that'll still function essentially the same, but hold more of the heat. Over on the other side, we will, part of that buildup will also create more of a back for the other seat over on that side. As far as the finish of it goes, I'm looking into different kinds of natural plaster. I still have to do my research on it so that I know exactly what I'm doing. But I do know that I want a couple of really resilient surfaces, maybe incorporating granite or tile in like that horizontal surface up there. And the other thing that I know is that we will definitely incorporate some cushions on this seat and that seat because it needs it. It's a hard item. It helps to insulate just a little bit so that it's more comfortable to be on when it's at the higher temperatures, but it also holds the heat longer underneath those layers of fabric and material. So you don't want to get too hot and capture that heat and get to a point of combustion or melting any synthetics or anything. But an insulation layer over the mass helps to hold that heat a little longer.
It is on our goal list this year to finish this rocket mass heater. We're excited to make it beautiful. We also intend to make a couple more in other buildings on our property. So stick around, hang out with us, and we'll show you all of that. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Have a great day.
A significant light, just where